District regular school board meeting to order for Monday, February 14th, 2022. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I will note that we are continuing to recognize continued concerns surrounding COVID. We're encouraging members of the public to attend remotely. We also have opened up meeting to public. We greatly appreciate public support for and adherence to the safety protocols that we have in our district. I will move into item 2, which is meeting opening and roll call and verification of quorum. I will note that Anne Va is running slightly late, but she will be joining us virtually as soon as she can. So with that, I will have Carlin, go ahead and do the roll call and verification of quorum.
Mr. Mansky.
Here.
Mr. Pope.
Here.
Ms. Portson.
Here.
Mr. Wade.
Here.
Ms. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Ebel.
Here.
Ms. Rano.
Here.
Ms. Erler.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
All right, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will be moving into item 4, which is public comment. I will note for board members as well as for members of the public, as well as who are here with us and within the community, we do allow people to remove their mask in the event it is helpful if they are speaking and they want the mask removed when they are presenting comments, whether that be board members or members of the public. So I just want to make people aware of that. We do have some members of the public who have signed up to speak. I will note that we allow a 3-minute period of time for comments. We ask you to address the full board, and Corey will be providing a yellow sheet of paper when you have 30 seconds left, and then a red sheet of paper when that 3 minutes is up. So the first person who has signed up to speak is Tyler Dillingham, and speaking on agenda items 9A and B. And if you could all, members of the public, if you could state your name and address just for the public record.
Very good. Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Dillingham. I live at 3209 Oak Avenue, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. My wife and I, Tanya, own and operate Little Scholars Child Care and Preschool here in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I wanted to go back and give you a little bit of history. I know some of you have seen emails, but I think I wanted to just talk about it a little bit in terms of public comment. And that is, in 2007, the school district received a federal grant specifically to start a pilot community-based collaborative 4-year-old kindergarten program. Let me restate this. This was a pilot program that was federally funded, and it was a collaborative program to allow the 4-year-old kindergarten programs to be operated in the child care sites in this community. So, this model specifically called, as I said, to utilize the child care centers. Our collaborative partnership in Stevens Point has been used as an example around the state as what successful can be. And by the way, it has been very successful since 2007, and it is a model around the state of Wisconsin. So back in 2009, the school district also thought about opening one of their sites when the pod school, what is currently now the pod school, was sitting empty. At that time, a number of the community child care sites came together and spoke at the board meeting, much like this, in front of you guys, and had conversation about how this would negatively impact the child care community or the child care centers in our community. And at that time, that board and that administration decided not to vote on the motion because they understood that it would impact us negatively. In the district's presentation tonight, you will hear a number of points that support moving forward with the motion to open McDill and Jefferson schools. I propose that there has been a rush to pass this motion, and many questions still remain. For instance, why were the 12 community-based 4K sites only notified about this until only 2 weeks ago, when there was a presentation and time for us to learn about this? It was only 2 weeks ago that we were made aware of this. What are other possible solutions, the challenges that the school district and 4K sites face? How can the collaborative child care sites help with that? There needs to be more robust conversation, quite honestly, before we move forward with this motion. And I propose that the board thinks about that when they make their decision tonight about tabling this motion for now until there is more discussion on this motion. Thank you so much, and we appreciate everything you guys do as board members. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Kleiner, also speaking on 9A and B.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Kleiner. I live at 4216 Nebel Street here in Stevens Point, and I'm the 4K director at Kenaland Early Learning, also here representing 4K programming. Kenaland is embarking on our 37th year of providing preschool for 4-year-olds here in our community before it was even called 4K. Kenaland was also part of the piloting program with the collaborating partners in 2007, and in the nearly 15 years have implemented every required assessment and done every single thing that was asked of us to do, and have been rated as a distinguished site since the rubric was put into place. We work hard and are diligent to provide the best possible learning environment conducive for 4-year-olds. It is not that we balk at change. We obviously have complied with every change in the nearly 15 years that we have been collaborating. But what we do balk at is what appears to be dishonesty. If the Kennedy School classroom implementation was a test site, we should have been told that. As you can imagine, the proposal and PowerPoint attached to this evening's agenda was quite disturbing, and in our opinion, the information presented is quite inaccurate. As stated before, it does not represent a community collaboration partnership, nor does it represent how we are currently operating. How have parents been informed of these decisions? We would think of the population of students, parents of 4-year-olds, would be considered parents of a vulnerable population, and their development, emotional well-being would be at the forefront and important to this district, so they have a say in what happens in this program. Something else that is very disturbing to many of the community partners is that the 4K early learning principal is supposed to be our representative for the community partners. So if that is true, should she be involved in making a case for the program to be moved to the school district? That is very sad. So in reality, there is not a representative for the collaborating partners, and there needs to be. As the PowerPoint describes 4K challenges, one challenge is described as administrative pay differential, and the need to balance 4K teacher salary and expectations with other site staff. What exactly does that mean? It's been said many times at our 4K directors meetings that many 4K teachers actually make more income than the program directors. So is that a correct statement? Another challenge to be mentioned is that 4K revenue is used to offset other site expenses. Again, what is the supporting evidence for this statement? This year, Kenaland has 23 4K students. If we receive the distinguished rating, that would be $2,558 per student, which totals $58,000. When you subtract a teacher's full-time salary along with the assistant salary and the expenses involved, then the 4K revenue doesn't even cover Kenaland's expenses for when they are in session. We strongly feel it is our due diligence as collaborating partners to ensure that you have the correct information presented to you as the school board. so an accurate decision can be made, and to challenge you all to truly consider this vulnerable population. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Melissa Kessel is speaking on agenda items 9A and 9B.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Melissa Kessel, and we live at 3208 Wellsby Avenue, Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I have been working here in teaching for 29 years, 10 years with the 4K population here through the district. Now, I may be misunderstanding some things, because I'm going based off of the slide presentation, but it seems that the proposed 4K classrooms in the district, I have some questions concerning these. I do understand, excuse me, that the children of higher needs need that extra support right there in the classrooms, right there where the specialists would be at. That could be very helpful in things like that. But how are we justifying opening these new classrooms? Are we taking away from the enrollment of the sites that we currently have? For our center to add an afternoon section, we have to prove that there's a need at our center and not take away from other centers. If our district opens more sections at their buildings, how will parents still be able to use the daycare of their choice? I have students throughout the whole district. Parents drop them off in the morning, they go to and from the center. You know, how would they get to and from the district sites? I think this would take away from some of our clients and force parents to make other choices. Regarding the 4K at Kennedy, I am glad that they had a successful first year. But I am concerned that we'd base the sudden changes on 1 year's worth of data. Also, what level did the children start at? These are my questions, you know. How does this compare to the other students in the district? This seamless transition that was mentioned in the slides between 4K and 5K, I think it just adjusts. That was part of our collaboration, was that we'd have a seamless transition between the center and going to formal education. Now we're just shifting where that seamless transition would be. The last question has to do with collaboration. How much collaboration went into this proposal? You know, as one of the partners in this collaboration, I feel rather slighted and maybe underrepresented. I am questioning how much we truly support it at the district level, or if this is a part of a larger plan to eventually move 4K into the district. I think that this would cause us to lose some of our uniqueness of our program and would take away from some of the hard work that we've put into this program district-wide. I hope that we'd be considering what is best for the children, teachers, families, and the district as a whole, and not make any hasty decisions. I thank you for your time, board, and thank you for the representation you have in our district.
Thank you. Glenn Reindl, also speaking on agenda items 9A and B.
Glenn Reindl, 1024 Brawley Street. I'm speaking as a parent of twins currently in the 4K program. Right now, our twins are at Gazelle at UWSP. I guess the closest rough estimate to what Kennedy potentially could be is the MLS, the multiple levels of support services there. With twins, we have one that's very academic. He's a high-level reader. And then we have one who's more spirited, should we say. And I mention that because right now we are being able to experience the benefits of having extra support at Gazelle, whether it's through special education, whether it's occasionally through working with a counselor or providing an opportunity for us that I think would be beneficial for all. The big thing that I want to talk about, as far as I speak in support of Jefferson and McDill opening up, partly because there is a demand for it. We were busy the day enrollment came out. Gazelle was instantly gone within the first hour. We waited till August on a waiting list to get in because we thought there might be concerns. There is a demand. I know I only speak anecdotally, but among the parents of our children to be able to offer opportunities, especially opportunities like Jefferson and McDill, to transition. To know that my children could start at Jefferson and get all the way through Jefferson without having to go through any other center, with having the administration know them a year early, for having them take a look at any potential needs, whether it's testing or everything, a year early, I think it's incredibly beneficial. Now, I don't have anything negative to say about any of the other private schools. I mean, we tried to get into Little Scholars for daycare. Canaland has one of my favorite students of all time who worked there for years. She's amazing with children, okay? My here is to say, as a parent, as children, it's really important. But I'm also a teacher. I'm a 20-year plus teacher. And this is an investment in the future. You know, whether they go through St. Paul, St. Stan's, whether they go through Pacelli, ultimately, they're our responsibility. The public schools are the responsibility of any children who seek to go into the public education. And my argument is, why don't we start earlier? If there are issues to face in 4K, why shouldn't the district be using them right now? Why shouldn't we be moving forward right now? And in addition, students in my classroom talk about quitting $12 jobs for $14 an hour or $15 an hour jobs. How can you pay someone $18 an hour and expect them? Teacher turnover is an issue. You are going to get top quality teachers when they have high pay and benefits. And finally, let the market decide. Let the market decide. You can put it out, you can accuse it if they don't fill up, if they're empty, if they're not there. You don't even need to make the hires. You don't have to do that. And so I'm saying, moving forward, I ask the question that I want you all to ask yourself: how does this not benefit our 4K students? Thank you.
Thank you. Those are the people who signed up to speak. Is there anyone here present this evening that would like to speak on an agenda item? Seeing none, we will move on to item 5, which are presentations. And we have first Student Senate Representative report by Carolyn Blakeman.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
You're a little fuzzy.
Choppy.
Oh, okay. I will talk loud and clear. Okay. Happy Valentine's Day, firstly. A lot has happened since I last gave a presentation. It's Red and Black Week of SPASH, a week of dress-up days and lunch activities to celebrate the diverse clubs of SPASH. Students are looking forward to Friday afternoon, where everyone will participate in an hour-long teacher-led activity. In spirit of Red and Black Week, I'd like to spotlight some of the awesome things SPASH's clubs have been up to. SPASH FFA has been busy with their Leadership Development Public Speaking Contest, where 2 members advanced to the sectional competition. They are also planning a Food for America event in May at a local farm. SPASH GSA created a gender-affirming shared closet, and the Feminist Club created the Safety Coalition, a group of students who are properly trained to spot dangerous situations and act as a peer mediator, especially in instances of relationship and sexual violence. SCCLA will be hosting the regional competition next week at SPASH, where members will present projects they have been working on the last few months. The future health professionals of HOSA are currently planning a community color run, so be on the lookout if you're interested in participating. Thank you to the teachers, students, and community members who help uphold SPASH's rich culture of extracurricular activities. Red and Black Week will end with SPASH's winter formal this Saturday. The Student Senate has worked hard to put on the neon-themed dance. Over the first weekend of February, the Drama Club performed Seussical the Musical. Their months of hard work were evident in their performances. Congratulations to the cast, stage crew, orchestra, and everyone else who supported the play. Winter sports have entered their respective WIAA tournaments. Good luck to all SPASH athletes in their upcoming competitions. A special congratulations to Roisin Willis, who broke the world's ice wall indoor 800-meter world record over the weekend. This concludes the SPASH School Board update. Thank you.
Do board members have any questions of Carolyn?
Thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the next week.
Thank you.
All right, we will move into item B, which is the communications report. Sarah O'Donnell.
Hi. Thanks for having me tonight. The communication dashboard is included in your packet. We saw decreases in channels, including impressions and engagement. Across most of those channels, we did see a slight uptick in followers, which is on par with what we'd expect kind of month over month for winter. It's slow. It's hard to keep up with December engagement. It's what we would expect to see. Looking ahead, 4K registration for the 22-23 school year will begin on February 21st. This is an online registration process open to students in the district who will be aged 4 years on or before September 1st, 2022. Many of our community sites have been able to host open houses in person this year. Last year we were completely virtual. We will also continue to have those online for folks that either aren't able to make it, but encourage you to take a look there to see as families are making those selections. Point of Discovery School will also be kicking off their enrollment campaign next month for students entering grades 7 through 12. In the upcoming school year, again, we'll be looking to do some mix of in-person and virtual options. We know through some of our consumer insight data on kind of how families find and like to go into those classrooms. We really like to get them in the building so they can experience what school is like at PODS before they are making those decisions. One event that will not be in person this year that we've talked about is the art show. So we are through kind of that first semester. We are collecting art pieces, 10 per teacher, and we'll be putting together that virtual show. So I expect to have that out in early March. Really excited to share these pieces. Students have been working really hard, so helping them to celebrate that work is really exciting. I like that part. And then our school perception survey, we're taking a look at that again as well. That's an annual survey that we do on behalf of the board every year. We did a student survey as well last year. We are not going to be implementing that this year. We're going to come back to just our staff and our parent survey. We also want to take a look specifically at how the information is being used on the back end. So we may see kind of a more condensed version of that survey, one to try to increase participation and engagement so that we're getting folks, really sticking through with us. That survey can get a little bit long, especially if you have students in multiple buildings. You're answering that for each building. So just a heads up there. And then my last comment, I just wanted to mention the Golden Apple Awards. Sponsored by the Portage County Business Council, are open for nominations through March 1st. That's an online survey you can find. We have linked from our website as well. Thank you.
Any questions of Sarah by board members?
Sarah, just a comment. I encourage everyone to take a look at that art show. We have some of the most talented students in this district and art teachers that we should be so proud of, because that art is phenomenal. I always think it should be downtown and in an art museum. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
So-
showcasing that art it's really just very exciting, and there's such a great mix, right? It's everything from ceramics to mixed media to digital art, and our teachers do an amazing job of not only helping students make that art, but then helping to share that art out as well.
They're beautiful.
Thank you.
Sarah.
All right, we are on item C, which is the superintendent's report.
Good evening. Our COVID-19 cases are as low as they've been since the pandemic. We have 5 staff members and 3 students that are positive, and we only have 49 students that are quarantined. So our numbers are going down. The state of Wisconsin numbers are going down as well as Portage County. That said, our meeting with Portage County last week with Gary Garski, Portage County continues to remain at a critical level, though the numbers are going down. He's hoping that trend continues as we are, and of course, then we will continue to look at our mitigation protocols and hopefully continue to decrease as time goes. But until we meet again with Portage County, we will do business as usual. Parent-teacher conference at SPASH, February 10th. Junior high, February 17th. Elementary, February 21st. No school for pre-K through 6th grade. Last week was National School Counseling Week, so I'd like to extend a thank you to those that work with our students as it relates to all of the issues that our kids are faced with regarding mental health. Also, tomorrow's a big day. It's our primary election for school board. Those that are running, in order of the ballot: Jeff Ebel, incumbent; Alex Summers; Lisa Richter; Miguel Campos; Rob Mansky, incumbent; Carrie Prokop; Dennis Robbie; Jennifer Bushman; and Barb Portson, incumbent. So, message to all, please go out and vote tomorrow. I was going to also touch on Rasheen Willis. That's a big deal. Nate Olson texted a number of us in terms of her national indoor record as well as her U8 world record. That's a big deal. That, I believe, is all I have, unless there are any questions for me.
Do board members have any questions of Craig? Thank you. We will move into our consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening includes the minutes of our school board meeting from January 10th, 2022, the approval of the scheduled monthly bills, and the employment recommendations. I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Judy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who was that? Was that Barb? Second by Barb. Any discussion or questions?
Meg, I had a question. When I was looking at them, at the, especially the resignations, there were, a few that were like, today, I'm done today. At the end of the day, I'm gone. Is that unusual? I mean, to me, it's unusual because you'd say, if I'm out, I'm going to leave at the end of the school year, but I was kind of concerned at the number that were saying, I'm out of here today.
So I'm thinking if we're going to get into substantive discussion, what we need to do is we would need you to make a motion to pull employment recommendations off consent, and then we can go ahead and approve the other two items, and then we can take a look at that separately. With consent, it's typically motion, second, and passed.
Okay.
But, so if you'd like to make a motion
I'll
to,
make a motion to pull out the employment recommendations from the consent agenda.
do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mansky. Any discussion or questions on the motion? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay? Okay, so let's move forward, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the minutes and the approval of the schedule of monthly bills.
So moved.
It's a motion by Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ranow. Any discussion or questions on the motion? So the motion is to approve the consent agenda of the minutes and the monthly bills. I will have Carlin call the roll due to the monthly bills.
Mr. Wade,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Rano,
Yes.
Ms. Va, not with us yet, Mr. Mansky,
Yes.
Ms. Erler.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Okay, so now we will move into employment recommendations. And I guess I'd be looking for a motion to approve and a second, and then we'd be open for discussion.
Move
I
for
have-
approval.
Motion by Scott, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Wade. Any discussion or questions?
Well, that, I'll restate my question is, it seems to me that there were a number of employees asking, or not asking, but saying, I'm quitting today, not at the end of the year. Is that unusual? I've only been on the board 2 years, but it seems to me like that most people would say, well, I'm done at the end of the school year.
I'd say, gee, 5 years ago, that was absolutely true with certified staff. Typically, contracts go from July 1st to June 30th, and that's typically when people leave. Very seldom would you have somebody that would leave in the middle of the year unless it was tied into either a health condition or maybe a spouse that took a job somewhere else and they had to relocate. That's changed today, and it's changed considerably since COVID. And this is not uncommon to Stephen's point. The stories that I hear of people just leaving, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. Stress levels are very high, and people do have other options. But we've got one of the retirements or a resignation simply going back to where they were last year. And if they're certified and under contract by law, simply payment of your liquidated damages allows you to leave. We can't do anything about it. So it's different.
Attributed to COVID.
I would. It started to some degree, not necessarily in the middle of the year, but the amount of people that move around today is significantly higher than it used to be. Back in, you go back 20 years ago, oftentimes you got a job in a school district, you stayed there your whole career. And you've all heard the stories. Well, I thought I'd stay here 3-5 years, and now I'm retiring. We've all heard those. That's changed considerably 10 years ago than certainly 5 years ago, and a lot has to do with supply and demand. There are other options. Quite frankly, people are getting out of education to do other things in the private sector. I personally know 3 superintendents are leaving this seat to go into the private sector next year, just to do something else. Now, all that said, COVID has created a level of stress, and we have seen a turnover during the school year like we've never had before, and that's not unique. Again, to Stephen's point, my colleagues are seeing the same frustrations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other discussion, questions on the motion? And the motion that is on the floor is to approve the employment recommendations. Hearing none, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay? The motion carries. We'll move into item 7, business services. And tonight we have the chair of that committee present, and I guess I would call on you to go ahead and run the business services and the that portion of me.
All right. Well, thanks, Meg. The first item under business services is 7A, approval of 2022-23 student fees. Mike, are you going to give that report to us?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead with that. A little bit of background. Board policy states that the board may levy certain charges to students for appropriate learning materials in the course of instruction. This can include books and materials, co-curricular activities, parking, musical instrument rental, and other approved purposes consistent with state law. The amount of the fees will be determined annually as part of the budget development process. Therefore, the board annually reviews student fees. So that's what we're doing right now. So everyone should have a list of the current student fees along with an explanation of any change. For the most part, there were no changes at all in elementary levels for student fees. There were a few changes. I'm going to take these off. There were a few course changes at the secondary level for summer school and just also other courses. But most of those changes are due to courses that are just no longer offered, and just building consistency between the buildings. So we had some buildings charging one fee and other buildings charging another for the same course. We wanted to bring those together so that they were the same. There was, however, one change that came through today, and this was a summer school fee. It's located on page 8 if you want to take a look at it. That fee is for choir camp. So that did go up from $5 to $35. Now that's a course that was not offered the last 2 summers due to COVID. So one of the reasons why that course is going up in cost is because they want to provide masks for students that they can wear and sing with. And so there's an additional cost to doing that. There's also some additional costs to the music, to purchasing music for their shows. And then also, so they have a T-shirt to wear, so they all have the same T-shirt while they're performing. That's my summary of student fees.
Do board members have any questions of Mike with respect to the proposed fees?
I had one question.
Yep.
The student fee, which was the activity fee, $40, it didn't seem to be tied to a specific class or event. How does that get assessed?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we found was when parents were paying that fee, it was called an activity fee. They immediately associated that with athletics, and it was confusing. So that's really just a name change. Instead of calling it activity fee, we're just calling it student fee. That's all that is. The amount hasn't changed at all.
And are all students assessed that fee, or?
They are, yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, when I first saw this course last year, it's staggering.
Yeah.
Seeing what we call a public school be charging this much. My question is, and I don't know if this can be done, is there any way to find out how many kids decide not to do this, or families decide not to do these because they can't pay for it?
Well, my understanding is that families who can't pay for them, principals can make that determination not to charge them the fee and still allow them to take the course.
Do you know how prevalent that is?
I don't. I mean, I can talk to principals and try to get an idea.
There are always students that don't have the means, and through either the principal or through our student services department, they determine that and they get waived. I wouldn't say it's very prevalent.
And then the other question I had was, families with, say, more than a couple students involved in these things can run a big cost. Is there any way to bundle to a family, say, you got kids all over doing this, costs a lot of money, bundle it up a little bit?
Well, I don't believe we're currently doing that. I don't know if that's something that we're gonna look into in the future or not, but I don't think we're currently doing that.
One family that was paying a lot of money for these things, because they're valuable, and they brought it up with them, knocked a little bit off, make it a little easier.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we can look into.
Do principals have that discretion?
That's probably a larger question or discussion with the activities director and Tom's office. This is an age-old issue. When we talk about the fees and wanting to limit the cost to families, at the same time, a limit to the cost to the taxpayers, because it's got to get paid for one way or another. And if the families aren't paying it, the families that are actually utilizing the services, it becomes a greater, though we're not talking about a significant amount of money, but at the end of the day, it all adds up. It then gets pitched back into, the Fund 10, which we currently have a $2 million deficit. But that's something we can take back to cabinet and have discussion. So you're looking at having a maximum and whatnot. I know for athletics, I would do that.
I'm trying to, I mean, if there's a policy, that would be all right, but, I mean, on a more humane level, just a general, you want to help you out a little bit, things
Right.
like that. And then to get at students, because we know they're out there, students that don't participate in something because their family can't afford it. But I don't know how to get to them. I know teachers, principals sometimes know who they are, but how do we
Right.
get to people who don't? And I don't know how. I don't have the answer to
Yeah.
that.
Tom, can you speak to this? Tom's in his
I think
office.
he's in the hallway.
He's in the hallway, but I'm not sure he heard what.
They have a question regarding student fees.
What's the question? Well, my question is how, and I don't know if it's germane to you now or not, but how do we find kids of families that want to participate but can't because of money? And I know that because of the fee. And I know that principals, teachers, sometimes, and I know some organizations have people that will pay for other students other than their families to participate.
Sure.
But it's all on a like ad hoc, informal basis.
Well, we have a form that any parent can go into the office and get. It's a fee waiver form, and they could request that fee be waived to the principal, and then they respond to that.
So that's a way that.
That's definitely a way that they can avoid the fee if they're in a situation where it's difficult for them, absolutely. And it's done.
That's disseminated throughout.
Yes.
All schools the same way, yes. And those forms are used quite often.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks.
you're welcome.
So are there any other questions of Mike with respect to the proposed fees scheduled for this year? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the 2022-23 student fee schedule.
So move.
Motion by Wade, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Scott. Any discussion or changes? Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Any opposed with nay? The motion carries.
Okay, the next item under business services is 7B, financial summary referendum progress report. Dr. Owens, are you going to take that one?
Yes, good evening. I just want to bring you up to date on our monthly progress of our facilities construction and remodeling and whatnot. We're moving along nicely. We've had 68.9 million contracts paid to date out of our 78.2 or 3 million. We've issued contracts to 75.9 million roughly as of the date, with a contract balance yet of being paid of about $7 million. We have 3 final projects that will be going out for bid in the next month or two. That'll be our pods, and then support service buildings, and then the transportation parking lot. So we're getting very close to the end here, folks. It's only taken a few years, but we're getting there. So that's the report. We're still on target. We're hanging right around that $2 million figure that I told you about last time, as far as the balance, et cetera. Hopefully, it'll require us to avoid much getting into any fund balance aspect. So, subject to any questions you have, that concludes my
Should be
report.
wrapping up probably around October, I would think, our final walkthroughs.
Yeah, I'll take it a month at a time. I figure it'll be wrapped up when I pay the last bill. Okay, thank you.
So, any questions of Tom about that at all? So I'm hoping as we move into next year and everything's together, and hopefully that COVID is in a place and we are in a place that we're going to be able to open up the buildings, so that I know we've wanted the community to be able to come in and take a look at the investment that they made in the buildings and the changes that we've made in support of our students and staff and parents and community. So hopefully once we've got them all wrapped up, we can look to be having some open houses. All right.
And the last item is 7C, review financial statements. Mike?
Yep. Tom and I just keep changing places up here. So the financial reports are through December 31st of 2021. So we're already in February, but we're always looking back. So one of the big things that happened in December is on the 6th of December, the district received an equalized aid payment. So that was really our first payment for this fiscal year. Although we had received a payment in September, that was actually for the previous fiscal year. But together, they represent about 40% of the 21-22 certified amount that we'll receive throughout the year. The next state equalization aid payment is going to be received in March on the 28th, and that will represent an additional 25% of the aid that we're going to receive. Because equalized aid was received, you'll notice that our general fund balance increased to about 8.5 million. And then if you look at Fund 10 revenue, you'll see that it's about 23.46% of what we budgeted, which is 21.2 million. That's compared to 21.46 last year. So it's a little bit more than what we had last year, but that's due in part to some money, some CRF funds that came from the governor this year that were not in our budget. Fund 10 expense is at 40.14% of our budget compared to 40.87% last year. So in terms of spending, we're about where we were last year at this time. Any questions on the financial statements?
Mike, any large, something to look at that's unusual this year in these bills? That
Well,
kind of stands out?
Well, I think what's unusual is that we received $955,000
Right.
From the governor's CRF funds. And that came in December, so that shows up on this report.
Right.
And that we're probably not going to see again.
Yeah, the
It's a
one-time.
one-time
the one-time. But not on the actual bills, anything unusual? Pretty close to what we were last year.
Yeah, we're really close to where we were last year.
Thanks, Mike.
Gee, if you're going to speak, could I ask you to your microphone? Otherwise, you're not being heard on tape.
Mike's gonna look at the back of my head.
That's okay. That's okay.
I don't want my back towards Mike. You mentioned something about when Tom was talking about a $2 million deficit in some fund.
Fund 10.
Fund 10 is our general fund, right?
Correct.
But Mike just said we have like 21 million or something in there. That's our checking account, right?
Our general fund balance right now, at the end of December, was 8.5 million. So remember that at the end of November, it was really low.
Yeah.
And now it's coming back up, and will continue to go back up until early June, and then you'll see it's going to hit another low point. So it's going to go up and then kind of come back down again.
Am I getting two funds mixed up here then?
When you refer to the checkbook, I believe you're referring to Fund 10. Fund 10 is, it's money in, it's money out. It's where our revenues come in, and they fluctuate all year, as Mike stated, depending on when we get our state aids and, of course, when we get our tax revenues. At the beginning of the year, we're like in the July, August, September, we're waiting for money, and our bills are really high because we're up and running. Then we get money from the state. We get so it goes up and down. The only time you can really gauge what that Fund 10 looks like is on June 30th when the books close, and make that comparison. Now, that said, as Mike said, we always start monitoring after the first of the year. Where are we as it relates to last year, a 5-year history? And we are right where we anticipated, with a $2 million deficit. And as Mike earlier stated, what is different is that other $900 and some thousand. But again, that's really nice to have that money. We appreciate it. But when you've got a deficit, that simply reduces your deficit. It's not necessarily new money.
And I want to note that the $2 million structural deficit is the $2 million structural deficit that it's the budget that this board passed.
Yeah.
Subsequent to that, and that's for our recurring ongoing expenses in our general operating budget. We had a $2 million structural deficit. The governor provided us with close to $1 million in one-time funding, which this year helps this year's budget. does nothing moving forward to support increased expenses within our district. And as Tom noted at the last meeting, the legislature provided us with 0 additional dollars this year. We are going to be going into negotiations taking a look at negotiations this evening in closed session. And as a district, the state has provided no additional dollars to support any addition to ongoing wages, benefits, support of our school district. And that's why Tom talked at our last meeting about the reality of a fiscal cliff, not only for our district, but virtually every district in the state. At the end of these next 2 years, when the one-time COVID funds that we are using to support our budget and the one-time funds from the governor that we're using to support our budget are no longer there moving forward. It's something that we as a board and something that we as a community have to recognize. Right now, we are using those one-time funds to support our ongoing operational expenses. None of us do that if we're good fiscal managers in our homes, we don't use our savings and are unable to, over the long term, to support the ongoing expenses that are required in our everyday living expenses. So I think that's where it gets kind of confusing. It's the budget that we set as a board, and then of course, how the budget operates through the year reflects the highs and lows of the timing of our revenue and the timing of our expenses. So we've been living on borrowed money until December, when we finally received our first payment through the government, which we do every year. And we use our fund balance to be able to support those expenses. But
Tom shared actually with Corey and I a 5-year plan that we'll be sharing with you later on this spring, to give you a more of a clear snap, or more of a story, I should say, because to say a clear snapshot, it's all speculation as it relates to the gubernatorial race next fall, who gets elected, and the biennial budget that gets created. So we can we have created a 5-year scenario, with, again, making some assumptions based on current current trends. Now, that said, the state's sitting on a pile of money right now. Whether or not that goes to education is going to be a huge issue as it relates to the gubernatorial election.
And when are we going to have that presentation?
May or June.
Once we get a better handle on where our budget is for this year.
Okay.
Are there any further questions of Mike with respect to our financial statements?
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
So, Rob, if you don't mind, I'm going to just talk through just kind of the logistics of how we want to work through this, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to run. We have 2 items coming up, ed services related to the 4K program. Staff has provided a presentation that will provide information to the board with respect to both of those agenda items. But once the presentation has concluded, then Rob, as chair, will be calling each item separately so that each item can be separately discussed and voted on. So I guess with that, we can go ahead and have the presentation, and then Rob will be calling the items up.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll get started. Are you all set, Corey?
Yep.
Okay. So Our 4K program is titled Point for the Future 4K. This program began in 2007 with just over 300 students as a grant-funded, community-based 4K collaborative program. We began as a public-private partnership with a common goal for all students to have high-quality access to an early learning environment before entering kindergarten. We have learned a lot and have monitored progress along the way, including the diverse needs of our students and how we can best serve them. With board approval, we changed our 4K model, shifting from a 100% community-based model to a blended model starting with the 2020-21 school year, allowing us to serve the Kennedy attendance area. In fact, our current student count is on average well over 500 students. 97% of our current kindergarten students have come from a 4K classroom, most of them from a public 4K classroom. We continue to have a largely community-based model and continue to value our community-based partnerships. We have 12 unique partnerships, 17 different locations, 30 sections, and 20 teachers spread throughout our community. We have a unified curriculum and assessment. Each site offers a unique site-specific philosophy, programming, and resources. 4K teachers are encouraged to follow the district MLSS process. So that's the multi-level systems of support to support students that might need something beyond what would be typically provided in a classroom.
Sorry, Sherry, something's.
That's okay. I thought it
Here we
was
go.
me, Corey. Okay,
it's me.
so into the next slide on program evaluation. So how do you measure the success with a model like this? Previously, we used something called the Early Childhood Environment Rating Scale, which looked at quality early childhood learning environments. And that tool worked well for many reasons, but one thing that it did not do was measure the delivery of the curriculum and assessment or monitor the contractual compliance. That led to us creating a program evaluation rubric with a small work group of directors that were invited to attend, looking for more direct feedback on exactly what to do, what not to do, what were issues within the contract and curriculum and assessment. After hearing positive, let me back up for just a moment. So when we implemented the use of that program evaluation rubric, we saw increased curricular implementation. We saw increased contractual compliance. We saw increased student performance. However, we also saw a negative impact on our culture and morale as a program and in our sites. For proposal tonight is to look at that program evaluation tool a little bit differently. And that was after hearing feedback from our 4K community partners, including administration and teachers. One proposal is that sites will get paid a flat rate per student per day as a base rate. Currently, based on their evaluation, they would be eligible for additional compensation. Each site will be encouraged to score within the effective or distinguished categories. Right now, sites are encouraged to score within the effective category, but most are striving for that distinguished category due to the additional compensation. When our sites started on the rubric, we had many in the effective area with several in categories of just under effective, and we've seen a huge shift in that model with that rubric. Any site that would score a 1 in any category would work with the early learning principal to create a plan of action. A lack of progress may result in contract termination, which is not a change. That's currently how that would work. The early learning principal will use the curriculum implementation checklist to measure curriculum fidelity. And so this year in 4K, we have a new curriculum called Frog Street, and it comes with an embedded implementation checklist. And we've talked as a group about using that tool as a coaching tool, and then to help measure and support the curriculum implementation. Another change within this contract, and this is after hearing feedback from our group, is that we would be looking at a 1-year contract. Currently, our partners are on a 3-year contract. And with all of the changes and the budgetary considerations, any additional funds, our enrollment for what it is, it seemed to make a lot of sense from the district perspective as well as from the director perspective. Okay, Corey. Program strengths. In our program, we have formed strong, positive community partnerships. We're able to form earlier family relationships. A big part of the work that we do in 4K is to support families through outreach that targets what we can do at home to support our children in education. Our strong community partner support helps bridge that gap to families. Many of our families, between 40 and 60%, and of course that number changes each year, are wraparound child care families. So many of them start with our child cares in infancy and go through those programs for 4K. So in the event a parent has a question, or if a teacher notices something in the classroom, it's been helpful to be able to rely on the child care staff to make that first contact with our families, and that's been more comfortable for our families. Another benefit to our program is that we have earlier intervention and access to students. We have a robust social emotional learning curriculum. We have some nice screening tools in place. And so we look for that social emotional development, the speech and language development, whole child development as early as a student being in 4K. When we see that a student is not making progress, we work with our teachers and our program support team to provide targeted intervention in a 4K classroom, and that works the same in our special education classroom as well. 4K has increased kindergarten readiness skills. And 4K has eased the transition to kindergarten. We're able to provide families with options that meet their needs. And there's a variety of different needs. There's wraparound 4K childcare needs. So again, those are the children that are at a center for childcare, and they also need that 4K so that they can have the same skills as their peers when they enter kindergarten. We also have a percentage of families that are 4K only families. That means they might be coming from home or a smaller licensed childcare within the community that we don't have a partnership with. We also have a partnership and work duly with Head Start to serve students in Head Start and early Head Start. With regard to program challenges, the district level support includes the early learning principal, a reg ed program support specialist, a school psychologist, and 1 instructional leader. And just as a reminder, we have 12 unique partnerships, 17 different locations, 30 sections, and 20 teachers. I'll correct that because we started the school year with 20 and we lost one along the way. We consolidated some programming. That program support is shared with our early childhood special education programming, which is an additional number of students spread throughout the community. It's a geographically large area to cover. Responding in a crisis situation if needed is not always timely. Within my role and the role of our program support specialist, our school psych, there's the idea of coaching versus supervising. When I come in to support a classroom because of my role as an early learning principal, that you can imagine that would be a little bit intimidating when I don't see these teachers every day. But part of my work is to support the curriculum and mentor them as new teachers. It's difficult to form relationships Often when I'm in the classroom, it's out of a crisis response or as part of a formal visit. The program support at the site level varies. Our sites serve students in childcare. There's more than just 4K at our sites. Head Start is an example. We have partnerships with our private school system in town. And so that support is split between the entire entity. As I said earlier, there's a large 4K student entity. Our third Friday count this year was 517. We have another amount of students in special education that we serve. We have individual student needs to consider as well as staff needs. Just thinking about students that are receiving targeted intervention through the multi-level systems of support, there's over 50 students that are receiving support from their teachers and sites in collaboration with our program support teacher, hoping to gain skills so that they fall into a category that suggests typical development. With regard to staff, to start the year this year, there were 10 new teachers. That number has changed since the start of the school year, and we've now been supporting up to 12 teachers because of turnover. In that case, ultimately what happened, just so that you know, is that a site was unable to fill some positions, so they had to put two substitutes in the position who needed program support. And then that eventually we were able to put staff in the classroom, but it's just two additional new teachers to support. Thinking about the transition to kindergarten, there are 17 different sites, and we talked about the other numbers in there as well, 30 sections. They all transitioned into 9 different elementary schools. You can imagine some of the challenges with that transition. The 4K teacher turnover has been identified in multiple long-term planning conversations as a barrier. And part of that is because of the salary and benefits. That's not what anybody wants for our 4K teachers. That's not what our district wants. That's not what our community partners want. We want to pay our teachers more. We just need to consider what our financial capacity is, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that come with that as well. The program support is a challenge. We're stretched too thin with the program support that we have. Just to give you an example of the turnover rate, in the 1920 school year, we had a 33% teacher turnover rate to start the year. 2021, it was 40%. This year, when I prepared this, it was 52, but because of that change at a site, it was up to 57 when I looked at it today. 50, that's the highest it's ever been. A different average for you, just program-wide, historically, is between around 30% each year. Something else to consider in that process is often we have first-year teachers or they're new to the position. And so maybe they came from a different district in a first grade classroom and relocated here, so 4K is new to them. This year, of our new teachers, of the 10 to 12, we had 9 that were first-year teachers or new to 4K. We have 4 teachers that are currently working through a license with stipulations due to not having the correct license. And then again, we had the 2 long-term subs that started the year. No simple solution. You heard from our community partners, and we've identified some needs. There is no simple solution to this. We have conducted initial long-term and contract planning meetings. I've had many one-on-one conversations and small group discussions. We've also included our early childhood special education team or stakeholders into some of that long-term planning. We've considered many options. We've considered increasing the annual student allocation to our community partners and requiring them to pay their teachers more money. That costs the district more money, and it's not that simple in an already established system. When you have a teacher that teaches 4K getting paid different than a teacher that teaches in an infant classroom or a 2-year-old classroom. At times, not always, if we were to require a site, were to pay a 4K teacher a predetermined dollar amount, it might be more than what the administrative team gets. And so you can see some of the cultural morale issues that may come with that. We've considered housing district staff and community-based buildings. Again, that would be at a cost to the district, and it would provide some supervision challenges. The costs in that case would typically due to rent at each location, general maintenance, and things like that. I recently had a conversation with the director where we really looked at that as part of this planning process and just putting the numbers on paper, realizing what we were bringing to the board in terms of a student annual increase, that they weren't going to be able to pay that rent because they already had established their budget. We've considered a model where we would pay our 4K teachers additional compensation. Again, that would be at a cost to the district that we don't have funds for at this time. The reality is that all options would cost the district more money than offering these two 4K in 2 buildings. The district has paid out an average of $1.2 million per year for the last 3 years to our partners, not including transportation or other curriculum and program support costs. In addition to our district dialogue, there have been regional and state dialogues that I've been a part of, trends and norms. Based on the DPI's 2021-22 public 4K kindergarten program breakdown, which we'll get to in a little bit on a different slide, 71% of Wisconsin districts offer 4K in public schools. 25% offer a blended model. 3% offer community-based only. And 2% do not offer 4K. As you think about these things, I want to remind you of some things to consider. We need to balance or consider balancing 4K teacher salary and expectations with other site staff, including administration. 4K revenue is used to offset other costs. Our class sizes range in 4K from up to 24 to less than 10. It's difficult to pay your teachers when you're only getting paid for 10 students. And sometimes those that might only come with 1 section rather than 2. We talked about the staff turnover. We talked about resources to support challenging behavior. Those resources look different in a child care. So moving on to Kennedy 4K. We launched Kennedy 4K during the 2020-21 school year. Under district supervision, the building principal is able to visit the classroom each day, and often does. There's a high level of instructional planning and targeted instruction. Our Kennedy 4K classroom, like many of our other community partners, has a distinguished score on the 4K rubric. As a district employee, our teacher falls under educator effectiveness, which has looked different this year, but we still follow that same model and coach our teachers through growth. As a district employee, compliance is not tied to a rubric or contractual language. Thinking about 4K teacher retention at Kennedy, we have like 1.5 years to think about, but one thing that we know is our teacher came back to Kennedy. Kennedy 4K benefits from the building level, multi-level systems of support process. Special education at Kennedy. There's limited to no travel costs to support student needs. Kennedy staff have been able to serve students with existing staff, without adding additional staff to serve that population. That's subject to change based on student need, but at this time they've been able to serve students in the 4K program. Thinking about data. The literacy screener is used in 4K. Twice a year, our teachers look at uppercase, lowercase, and letter sounds. In an effort to pull together data here, we looked at the difference, the growth rate from fall to spring at Kennedy 4K and compared it to the district average of that same growth rate. Kennedy scored higher than the district average by 21%. Kennedy had one of the higher attendance rates at 96%. There will continue to be an ongoing review and monitoring process, as this is year 2 for Kennedy 4K. The transition to kindergarten at Kennedy has been called seamless. Our administration and teachers have shared that they feel there's a high level of kindergarten readiness in their current 4K program, kindergarten program. Looking at kindergarten data, the FastBridge Early Reading Composite showed that all kindergarten students at Kennedy are on track to meet year-end literacy benchmarks. Kennedy 4K scored the highest low-risk student percentage, which basically means they had the smallest number of students that demonstrated they may have a difficult time learning the skills that were required of them. So they had the highest low-risk percentage. They had the lowest high-risk percentage, meaning thinking of children that might struggle to learn those skills, Kennedy had the lowest percentage of students. The Social, Academic, and Emotional Behavior Risk Screener, or SABRS, showed that Kennedy 4K scored higher than the district average with low-risk behaviors. So again, it's that same comparison, thinking about students that might have some socially emotional skill needs. They had the highest number of students that might benefit from that targeted intervention. They had the lowest number. They had lower than the district average with those high-risk behaviors, or students that would need more significant intervention. Our kindergarten, I do want to add a caveat in here that overall program-wide, our kindergarten data had really positive scores on the SABRS, which to me is something to be very proud of program-wide. I already talked about our kindergarten teacher being positive. Next steps. We are proposing offering 4K at Jefferson and McDill. The need to monitor enrollment would remain very important. We would need to consider district, family, and student need and/or interest in any such programming. Why Jefferson and McDill? Both buildings have available classroom space. Both are play-based kindergarten pilots. Both have beneficial locations. With Jefferson, it's centrally located, it's densely populated, and that building has a low and/or declining enrollment. McDill is near the Plover attendance area, which is a booming area. And there are limited sites in the area if needed for overflow. This map of Wisconsin, you can see it's from 2013-14, so it's old. But I think it provides a nice visual of what other Wisconsin districts are doing. More often than not, Wisconsin districts provide some district-housed 4K opportunities. Often, districts provide a variety of options that meet both district and community needs. It is more efficient to serve 4K only students when housed in a district building. Often, transportation can tie into the already established bus routes, and that's an incredible savings. With a full enrollment, it would likely be at least cost neutral. The community approach continues to be valuable, especially when providing wraparound services and supporting our community. Based on DPI's 21-22 public kindergarten 4-year-old program breakdown, 71% of Wisconsin districts offer 4K in public schools, which is not reflected on that map on the previous slide. This is just a little bit more current data than what that map shows. 25% of districts offer a blended model. 3% offer community-based only programming, and 2% do not offer 4K. The next steps with board approval and for immediate action would be to update our website. With our registration opening in a week, we have some work to do. We would need to include Jefferson and McDill as 4K site options for the 22-23 school year. We would need to update our 4K enrollment form in Skyward. Both buildings would need to create a virtual open house presentation. During the months of March and May, we would need to monitor Jefferson and McDill enrollment to determine whether both buildings would be morning and afternoon, morning only, PM, or not at all. Again, it's based on student, district, and family interest. In May, June, we would need to post and hire staff. June through August, we would need to furnish and set up our classrooms. And that's the end of the presentation.
So there are two items on the agenda for consideration. The first one is a request to approve the offering of the option of a morning and afternoon section. Nope, I'm on the wrong one, excuse me. Do we want to, are we discussing both of these at the same time, or are we addressing each one separately?
I think the conversation was to address separately,
Okay,
so the
okay.
board members could ask questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first one is to move to approve the revisions to the 4-year-old kindergarten program and site agreement type 3 for 2022 and 23 contract as presented.
And maybe it'd be helpful if you just, if one of you would just run through those main changes again for board members.
Well, don't we have to kind of talk about both items at one time?
Well, one is about the existing contract. The second one is
No,
about.
it says the approved revisions of the program. And the
No.
program would be offering,
No, that's the second. The second item is related to the two new sites. The first one is the overall contracts with all of
The
the
one, Barb, where
sites.
it's one from 3 years to 1 year.
yeah, I understand that. It just seems like,
They are independent, aren't they?
They are. We have to
Yeah.
offer contracts because the current contracts that they have end at the end of this school year, so we'd need to offer them new contracts. And that's what the first agenda item is with the red lines. The major items there, and Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're moving from a 3-year contract to a 1-year contract, just because of the fluidity of parents and families in and out of the district and everything that's happening within the district. 3 years is a long time to commit to right now. A 1% increase per student per day. And Sherry referenced the reason why we went with 1% was because right now we are above the market rate in our payments to 4K sites. And we've always recently been using the market rate when it comes to salaries and other items. Initially, we had a date of, I think we had June 15th, that we would let partners know and receive their contract based on the enrollment that starts in February. Based on feedback from the meeting that we had with the partners, they asked if we could move that back to June 1st, which we will do. I mean, they would like to make some decisions, so we will offer them their contract based on enrollments by June 1st. The other major change in there, currently, we have kind of a target number of 10 per section. So we ask sites, if you're offering a morning and an afternoon program, could you try to get, 10 students in your program in the morning and 10 in the afternoon? We are asking that to be 13. Now, please know that if sites fall below or have fallen below 10, we did not say right away we're not going to have a program there. We've really watched trends over time. However, if a site has 1 or 2 or 3, that is just not a good model, and we would probably ask to put those 3 in another section within that site or a different site. Our average right now is 17 students per class, so we're asking them to hit 13, but our average is 17.
Are there sites that are below 10 continuously?
There have been. Yes.
Are there some as low as what you mentioned, 2 or 3?
Not right now.
Okay.
Not right now, but there have been.
Right.
And we've worked with the sites in that case. That has
Again,
not been the case for quite some time.
Right. Again, as enrollment starts on the 21st, we will keep in close contact with our community partners to kind of let them know where we're at with numbers. And they are also going to help us kind of market, sign up early. Parents have the opportunity to list their first choice and their second choice. And if approved tonight, we would just make sure that parents knew that we would also be offering potentially sections at McDill and Jefferson. So those are the major changes in the contract. And then the other agenda item that we're asking you to take action on is for us to actually add those sites at Jefferson and McDill, and then to closely monitor those as we are going to continue to do with Kennedy. If both the McDill and Jefferson programs were to run along with Kennedy, and they were at our district average of 17 students, that would mean that 17% of our 4K population would be in schools, and 83% would be in the community.
Corey, 2 other bigger changes with that contract is the change on the program evaluation rubric not being tied to additional compensation, as well as setting a standard number of days, which we haven't done with our partners for some time. We've followed the school district calendar and looked at student contact days, but with the additional e-learning days and or PD days, that's been problematic for our sites and hard to budget for. We've looked at other days and tried to make that right, but we felt like it was appropriate to put in a base of so many days per year.
Have all of the community providers been made aware of the contract changes?
Yes, we met with them in a meeting, and then we went over the highlights of what that would look like.
What's the fiscal implications for the 1% to 2% for the district if we did do 2%? If this is in here, I apologize.
No,
if I'm
it's
not seeing
okay.
it.
I don't have this number it's close to $14,000 or $15,000, I believe, for 1%, and then it would be double that for 2.
Correct.
And we can get you the exact numbers as well.
And then it says that the attachment says the contract for not UWSP.
Yes.
Is there a different contract?
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that was brought to my attention too. So the university has a specific contract because their legal team has some pretty specific language in there towards the back of it. That's really specific to them, and Tom would have to explain what it actually means to you. And so their contract is just a little bit different in that way, but everything else is the same. And so on our end, we save them differently. There's a standard one, and then there's the UWSP one, and we should change the title, or we should have added that contract. We just felt like it would be a little confusing, or I did. Does that clarify for you?
It does. So we wouldn't be approving the UWSP specific contract at all?
It would be, well, what we had talked about is if this is board approves, we would hand a copy of that to the university and say, bring this through your legal counsel and let us know what they need to have different.
And if there were significant changes, Rob, we would bring that back here, but generally, they haven't had any significant changes from year to year. And their contract would look the red lines are basically the same as what we have in the other contracts.
So they're not part of the Community Association of 4K providers?
They are. Yeah, they are. They're one of our community partners. I should have brought an example of how their contract is different, and I don't want to give a false example of what that would look like, but something similar to language like hold harmless or something like that. We can get you that clarification, though.
And that's been in existence
Yep.
since its inception?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But they don't meet as part of the group?
They do.
They do.
They do.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with the program. It's really more that legal language. So they would follow the same expectation with 145 days and participate in the director group meeting, and it would be exactly the same as expectations for everybody else in terms of performance.
A couple more questions, sorry. This would be reviewed again next year. At this time, this would be part of the 1-year renewal.
Yes.
Is it, some of the concerns I think we've heard is that this seemed to be at least part of this was a surprise. Is there a way to get this earlier so we're not, I guess from my perspective, I feel like we're kind of rushed on this for both parts of these to get this within a week. Is this our typical timeline for approving some of these?
It's later than we would have liked. I completely agree with that. I believe we started having discussions about getting together and forming a team before December. It was really difficult to find time to meet with that task work group. I'm sure COVID made that problematic. Covering buildings for staff was a challenge, and our 4K community sites have different work hours and things like that, and that was problematic, and scheduling on our end with multiple people was problematic for the same reasons, so.
But all the community partners had an opportunity to provide input on this, at least?
When we met with them,
Now they did, is
group.
another thing, but did they have an
Yep.
opportunity?
When we met as a large group, they did, and also our work group, our providers were encouraged to reach out to our work group to provide feedback. We had conducted a survey as well before we really got started with some of that work.
And you have director meetings on a regular basis as well?
Monthly. Mm-hmm.
And what was their feedback?
To what specific part?
The community partners when they were informed of the 1 year and all of that.
One of the things they had requested, Barb, was the change in the date from June 15th to June 1st, which we implemented. Their feedback was they were concerned about the addition of, the school sites opening and potentially taking kids from their programs. I mean, they were open about that. The pay and the teacher turnover is a huge concern, as it is in the district, but it's tough to get people for any jobs right now, and it's tough for the partners to find qualified staff that they can hire and then that they can retain year after year. So, there was lots of things that they shared. Craig was there at the meeting, and Sherry was as well. But none of these
Concerned
ideas
that the
are
master
new.
plan was to
Yeah.
bring all of our kids back into our school buildings, and quite frankly, we don't have the space if that was the plan.
And I would like to add, as the early learning principal, I would not support that. I find there to be tremendous value in partnering especially with that wraparound service piece. I think with our 4K students, it's just a little bit different. They could go to an already established 4K program that has wraparound care. Otherwise, they could come to a 4K only program at a building. I mean, that's the piece to me. I feel like there's more value for our 4K only students. I think there was some gratitude about the 1 year contract just because every year I ask for more money for the sites. And you know, our administration knows what our financial capacity is. We looked at comparables. And when we were in that small work group, I was hoping in a way that I could say, well, this district pays more than we did, but that wasn't the case. And so that makes it hard as well when we're looking at those comparables that are out there in terms of what we're paying. So again, I think some hope that we'll start talking about this in 1 year again.
I have one other comment if this goes through. I see where you had redlined a monthly newsletter, but yet it's still on the rubric.
Yeah.
So that would have to be fixed.
Well, and it's on the rubric, and that's part of their evaluation. I didn't feel like it needed to be in the contract, but if someone felt strongly about that, we could put that in there. It's an additional point on the rubric, and most of our classrooms are doing weekly anyway, just to support that parent communication piece.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons for starting up the 4K at Kennedy was because there's a real need in that area for some kind of 4K program, instead of busing them all into town. What is the demand? I don't know. What is the demand for spaces right now in daycares?
Yeah.
Glenn said they had to call immediately, but that's at the university. What about the other places? Are there open slots for the wanting, or is there huge demand?
So I think we should that's part of the issue right now. We're really on the contract part, and then the next item will be the discussion about the actual sites. So if we could maybe focus the questions in on the recommended contract amendments and 1 year contract.
Well, we were just asking about feedback from them, so.
Barb, one other piece of feedback was that we talked a lot about the hourly rate per teacher and increasing that, but with a 1% increase, our sites did not feel they could achieve anything more than $18 per hour. So that was a feedback piece as well. And that made sense to me.
Do board members have any other questions with respect to the proposed revisions to the 4-year-old kindergarten program and site agreement type 3 2022-2023 contract as presented? Hearing none, I would look for a motion to approve the revisions to the 4-year-old kindergarten program and site agreement type 3 2022-23 contract as presented.
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion by Scott, a second by Wade. Any discussion or questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay?
Next on the agenda is the move to approve the offering, the option of a morning and afternoon section of 4K at Jefferson and McDill Elementary School. That is the request.
Okay, so, I'm not ready yet. Jump in, I'll wait.
I felt like I knew where you were going with that. Like, why are we doing this? Do you want me to talk about that?
I'll wait till Meg.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'll
no,
wait
I think we're at a place now if board members have any questions to ask of Sherry, Corey, or Craig prior to a motion. This would be the time for us to have that conversation.
Okay. I think it really goes down to program support and what we're able to do in that area program-wide. Students that would be housed at Jefferson and McDill would have the oversight of the building administration at each building. I become more program support in that case, but they're going to have access to that MLSS team and things like that, allowing me more time to support our community-based locations and the rest of our program support team. Additionally, at those buildings, we would have access or more resources available to support students with more diverse learning needs as well.
Well, I was asking about the demand for openings. Like, are people having a hard time finding places to put their kids before?
So what,
go ahead, Corey.
What that will, if we offer the option and we put it on the enrollment, which begins in a week, parents will let us know then what their first and second choice are. If there's not a demand and the numbers don't warrant having, let's say, a McDill program or a Jefferson, or even having, just a PM or an AM at one of those sites, we wouldn't do that. We would not.
Information from past years. Are there people, like, do they have to be on the phone right away to get their kid into a slot? Are there open positions left?
Yes, there are open positions left, and generally people get their first choice. Generally. Yep. And it changes year to year, based on maybe where people work, where their childcare is. Once a family starts in a location, generally they stay in that location.
Are McDill and Jefferson kids going to get first choice at these places?
No. We would look to, what the parents chose as their first and second choice. We would look to hold some spots. That number has not been determined for students who may have significant needs that we would better be able to support in a school building. And our staff and resources available. So it would not be just for those that live in those attendance areas.
Mike?
The recommendation mentions a morning section and an afternoon, so does a 4K student just attend one of those?
Yep.
And then, so if they attend the morning, then parents come pick them up after that, or to take them home, or?
They do that, or we transport them home or to a child care provider, or some of our community partners provide wraparound care, so they might go to 4K in the morning and then stay with that same provider in the afternoon.
I wonder if that would be a preference for parents. So if I needed childcare, I might pick a community provider to do the 4K. Then they don't have to go anywhere. They just stay there in the afternoon. But if I could come pick them up, I might choose a McDill or a Jefferson option. Do you think that's how that might work, or I guess we just don't know?
I think it may for some, Mike. It's just really hard to tell. I think we have, Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, about 40% of our population that do wraparound.
That varies every year as well, so a good range is between 40 and 60%. And that's of children that do wraparound care with our providers. But there's another percentage of students that are 4K only, but they might come from a smaller in-home child care or something like that, or from home.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Barb? Did you?
Rob was
Rob.
up
Oh,
first.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's all right.
Sorry.
No, that's we. Does adding 2 sites create an additional strain on resources for all the sites? Meaning we're already saying we're having difficulty finding teachers and staff because of whatever reasons. Does adding 2 more sites then make it additional competition for those staff? And when we're talking about traveling, now we have 2 more sites for special ed staff to travel to. Am I not understanding that?
No, I think you're understanding it fine. It's going to be 2 more positions that need to get filled. But honestly, we are going to have to look at the enrollment district-wide to see, again, which classes have that 13. And again, we're going to be looking at past practice, past numbers, past rosters, that sort of thing. We had talked about this when we met as a director group as well. Might there be interest from some of our 4K teachers in one of these positions for the salary and benefits? Yes. there's interest already from our 4K teachers from program to program. That's not uncommon at all. Corey also brought up something that I hadn't thought about. There's probably going to be interest from other district staff as well. I'm thinking about teachers that are in kindergarten, first grade that really miss that more traditional kindergarten classroom learning environment.
And Rob, it could do just the opposite. We may be able to utilize some of the resources that are currently in our building, and we wouldn't then need to use staff to go to existing sites to service those students. We could do that in-house.
It would be depending on student need and what the special, whatever those resources are allocated for in each building.
Are there some community sites that would rather opt out of the agreement? Do you know of any that just say, I don't want to deal with 4K?
We have not had anybody approach us with that to date.
Would this push some of them out of business? That would be a fear of mine, and then that impacts the business community because they need childcare for their employees to go to work.
Barb, I hear what you're saying, and that's a concern, I'm sure, of some of our community partners. We pay amounts to them each year, about $1.2 million. But I would not be doing my due diligence, nor would Sherry, if we didn't at least bring to you what we feel is a more efficient model for the district. Our job is to educate kids and to do that the very best we can. I would feel horrible if we were not able to offer the number of sections that we have currently in our community sites. However, if we can still provide programming for those students more efficiently, I think we have to look at it. We're continually looking at our programs K-12. I think we have to do the same with 4K. And I believe that this is a much more efficient way to do it, but we're not doing it. We don't want to do it all within the district. We still want to have a community collaborative model. I just don't know, based on parent interest, what they're going to sign up for.
Somebody on screen.
Ann?
Oh, Ann? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ann.
What are the closest sites, other 4K sites that are near McDill and Jefferson?
I need my map. So Jefferson is really near to several 4K community partners. We have the HRG, we have Gazelle, we have the YMCA, we have Hometown, we have Trinity. It's a very concentrated area. Near McDill, you're going to have part of, you have Little Scholars, CDC, Little Scholars Beginnings. We anticipate some of the Bannock attendance area as well. And just as, so that you're aware, the mobile unit at Bannock will not continue with us. So those are additional students that would need to be placed as well.
Did that answer your question, Ann, or did you have another question?
Nope, that's it for now.
Okay. I think I had Jeff, and then I had Mike, and then Chris.
Do you know at what level of capacity the community partners are working at right now? The existing sites, what's their capacity, what level are they running at?
Do you mean how full are they?
Yes. Against their capacity, against maximum enrollment.
Most of our sites could take additional students, but most of them are almost full. There's a few of them could take a handful more students. I'd have to get back to you with more concrete numbers on that. In the past, we've talked about and had conversation and dialogue with community partners about co-located site programming, so that would support our students with special education. And we were in a position where at the time most of our providers had indicated they didn't have space or there was a concern with resources for students that may be placed at their location.
Thank you.
Mike?
You may have mentioned this in the data that you provided, but if you compare 4K enrollment to kindergarten enrollment, what does that look like?
So about 97% of our eligible 4K students enroll in 4K and then transition into kindergarten. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm like, if there was 500 in 4K, what's the level in kindergarten in any given year?
Like a kindergarten class size?
What I'm ultimately wanting to know is how many parents send their kid to kindergarten but not 4K. So I think the number was 500 in 4K.
So
what is
about 3% of our parents do not send children to 4K.
Okay, so the number is pretty close.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I understand now. Thanks.
Yep.
Chris?
So, Sherry, so I was on the board when this originally came to the board. And I had a lot of questions, just putting 4K on buses, these are little kids and, special needs and that. So I was very concerned. But I absolutely supported it. I guess my major concern there was, these are our kids, and we don't have room. It would have been back then, I think, I don't know for sure, ideal to have these kids in our schools, to go from 4K to kindergarten, and to have services right there that if staff needed to access those services, they were there. The people in the building were familiar with the students in that. This is years later. So I'm just wondering, if you live in a neighborhood or you're in a community and you want your student to possibly go to a school, do you think there would be, as if I was the parent, a preference that I'd like my student to have that support of the district right there, and then transfer on from 4K? Not that all the students will come, from those schools and that, but I think a lot of them would. So I'm just wondering what the feel you think it would be. And again, I mean, opening them up and have no one coming to them, I just have a feeling that those numbers would be, I'd like to have my student in that school.
I don't know about that because there is such a strong need for wraparound care.
Right.
I mean, even thinking about Kennedy, when we started that program, that started with, or it ended with 12 students. It's grown now to 18. So, it'll be interesting to see what the parent interest is. Are you asking if parents maybe from outside, say Jefferson attendance area, wanted their child to go to 4K and then transition into kindergarten?
Yeah, and I also think
That
just
would be, that would be a
it would
PTR.
feel like that the services that are available for a large district, the staff that's there, moving from here to there, and I'm not, wraparound, it's great. I'm just wondering, we don't know, unless we offer something that, that we can potentially do in the district, in our buildings, and it's not to take students out of the community centers and that. And Barb, I know what you mean, and I know how you feel about that. I do too. But I'm not sure if the students would be in any way better served, and if they would, just having the access of being in those buildings.
And I think, if this were to get approved, we would have better information after at least a year to say this percentage of parents, were interested in a school-based site, or this percentage wasn't. I mean, it's just really hard to tell until we give parents an opportunity to show us what they're interested in.
Right.
Is it your intent to promote this to parents of kids that need more help?
What we would do, Barb, is just
list
list it on the website like we do, and then we would do the virtual
Open house.
Open house, thank you. I lost my train of thought. Yeah.
The same as we would, Barb, for any other program. We don't highlight one program over another.
But as a parent, I would want to know if there was a place that I could send my kid where he'd get more help.
Yeah, well, and that's, I think, a little bit student specific. Most of our students, I mean, it's definitely parent choice, but through our child find procedures and what we may have learned from our child care community sites about how a child did in 3-year-old programming or 3-year-old child care or has done at home might be like, can we talk about the best location for my child based on his or her needs?
G?
What's the cutoff point? How many kids would you take at each school?
That's a really good question. We could go up to 24. That's not ideal.
12 each session?
Yes. 20 is where we like to max it at. Right now, our average is 17. So again, we wouldn't fill those right away if there was a
24
big
each.
interest, because we would want to save some of those spots for students that may be in the process of being evaluated right now, and their IEP may determine that they need a lot of support. So we would not work to fill those initially.
But you said 24 each session for one teacher and an aide?
Mhm.
And they would have access to all the stuff that every other kid has in that school? Services, special ed services?
We have, whatever their IEP team determines is what we have to provide for special ed services.
But supposedly you wouldn't have to hire those services extra.
It just depends, G, on how many students that is and what those needs are.
Do you mind if we ask the 3 people who are here in support?
We can't
Oh,
talk.
okay. All right, sorry.
So I have a question. You know, COVID hit, and we saw a significant reduction for our kindergarten and I believe our 4K population, with families making the decision to not send kids 4K or kindergarten. We're now another year in, and I know we've seen an increase, but I guess I'm asking what our sense is about people within our community or potentially outside of our community who are making the choice to not enroll in 4K or kindergarten. And, you know, taking a look at what our numbers were pre-pandemic and what our numbers are now, where are we?
Our numbers, as you said, decreased during the pandemic. Year one, last year, we gained students again this year. I think it's speculation right now. We don't have any indicators that parents will continue not to send their kids to pre-K. I don't have anything to base that on. I would suggest that we're going to continue to see parents wanting to send their kids to pre-K. And then certainly kindergarten.
I guess I'm asking, are we seeing numbers 2 years down the road similar to what we were seeing prior to COVID?
I don't know if this helps. Sorry, Corey, you did it to Craig and then I did it to you.
Go ahead.
Last year during COVID, our third Friday count was around 450, maybe 452. Our third Friday count from this year was 517. Typically, we're between 505 and 520, give or take. So I feel we've rebounded nicely this year.
So last year, there was a lot of reluctance. Like Sherry said, we rebounded this year. They felt better about sending their kids to school this year than last year, given the uncertainty of the pandemic.
Quick question. Is there a cost difference between in-house and outsourcing?
Based on a 1%, and I think this is in the memo too, just for exact numbers. If we filled 4 classrooms with
To what, 17 or your target?
to 20, those were figured on 20. It's close to a $3,000 difference in additional cost to the district after the classroom is furnished, but that does not take into consideration time saved in program support, travel, student services. Transportation costs are yet unknown, but there could be some potential savings in that as well. And that would be for 2 teachers and then 2 EAs.
Meg, I think Ann has a question.
Oh, Ann, go ahead.
Question. So, I'm actually one of those parents that Chris was talking about. So, my son would be going into 4K this fall, and I was super excited at first when I said, oh, great, Jefferson's going to potentially be a site. It's going to be great for him because then it'll be, you know, like a normal routine for him to already be in that school and everything. But then when I look at the location of Jefferson School, it is mainly, majority of the students there walk. So there, you know, there's a little right behind, I forget what road it is, not east, but the one Wyatt. That's where the buses unload all the children. What does that look like for traffic? Because I know that when I'm dropping off my 6th grader right now, traffic is pretty hectic there already. And what is the capacity and what staff is going to be manning the bus area to load and unload the students if it were to become a 4K site? And it is also on the opposite end of the school building, where I would assume where 4K is if it's going to be located by the kindergarten area.
And I'm going to be honest, we haven't even thought that far ahead yet with the logistics of the buses at Jefferson, but I will definitely make note of that and we'll address that and make sure that parents are aware of what that will be. But whatever we do, we'll keep the students' safety at the forefront.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judy.
So essentially what I'm hearing is we think it's a really good idea, but we're not sure until we try it because we piloted in Kennedy, which is a completely different scenario than what it would be here at these 2 locations. So it's providing another option and a choice, but we don't know who will take us up on that option or choice yet.
That's correct, but we
Okay.
can say that 71% of other districts across the state offer in-school 4K only, which makes me think that it's working pretty well for them, or they would probably shift to a different model.
Rob?
One last thing. I think I've talked more than I have for the full year I've been on the board for this one. I'll admit I have struggled with this to understand kind of the mechanics of it, the reasoning behind it, the timing of it, and then some of the questions and pushback we got from our community partners that have worked with us for a long time. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly and trying to represent what I've been hearing too as well. Considering our partners, in some of our partners have expressed that we have been acting in bad faith or that they don't trust our actions here. That's concerning to me because regardless of the outcome of this, our relationship with these community partners are going to continue. So what can we do to avoid this in the future, to maybe repair some relationships, to not get to the point where we have to make a decision, a significant decision about a program that has to be made before we can switch within a week or two. I'm concerned about that timing of this, that if we would have had this conversation in December, we would have had kind of more time to process and get feedback. So that's, my concern beyond the mechanics of it is what do we do to make sure that our relationships with these community partners can stay positive and we can continue to have a productive program.
That's a good question. As I said earlier, we had hoped to bring this to the board well before now, but for a number of different reasons, we just weren't able to bring it to the board. December was the timeline we were originally targeting. Our process this year for the contract, just the contract piece, was different. I felt it was more comfortable. The conversations and contract planning from historically have always been really hard. I feel like each year it gets better because we learn from that period and try to make a change to move forward. This year, a difference was to work with a small planning group that had represented, again, each type of center that we had. But that's hard because all of our centers are so independent and they offer such different programming. You know, I don't know if a possible solution to that would be to, you know, communicate with the board and say, how about we elect some spokespersons from your group or something like that. But again, as we stated earlier, we had surveyed the directors and encouraged them to reach out to each other, but there's learning opportunities and all of these things to make it better for next time.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to note that as a board member, I have welcomed but questioned different opportunities and for us to provide to students in our district. I had probably as many questions as answers with respect to pods and with respect to expansion and with respect to providing options. And one of the things I guess I have internalized is the importance of providing options for families, in particular options that we are in a unique position to provide. So I guess I'd like you again to speak to what percentage of the 4K population we're talking about that we are looking to house in our schools, what percentage will continue to be in the community-based schools, and what unique opportunities might we be able to provide to families, in particular those who may be struggling with the existing options if we look to offer these two sections.
So if we were to offer these two sections, and if we were to fill those sites at 17 to 20 students, approximately 17% of 4K eligible students would be housed in school buildings. Jefferson, McDill, Kennedy. That would keep 83% of our 4K eligible students in our community collaborative approaches, where they hire the teacher, we hire existing itinerant staff that provides support and resources as they are able to do so. What unique opportunities is, for example, Jefferson has a program support specialist. She would be able to help students that may be struggling with mental health needs, students that are struggling with social, emotional, or life skill type needs. There's special ed staff at Jefferson Elementary School that could provide some support as well. Again, depending on what those needs are and how many students, I don't know that Jefferson staff could do all of that. We still may need to use some of our existing itinerant staff to do that. The teacher would be at McDill and Jefferson employed by the district. So it would be someone that would be in collaboration with other teachers, kindergarten through grade 6, around curriculum, around instruction, around assessment. They would have readily available access to a principal, to a building leader. Sherry, if she gets called when we have a student behavior issue, it may take her 40 minutes to get there depending on where she's at. Could take her 5, it could take her 20. I mean, it's a problem. And usually when she gets called to a site, there's something else happening at another site, and there's only one of Sherry to go around. So there are definitely resources that are more readily available to students if they were to need it.
Are there any other questions of board members for Sherry or Corey or Craig? I'm trying to look for Ann and behind me and for all of you out in front of me. But do any board members have any other questions of staff? Hearing none, then I would look for a motion to, let me pull it.
Move to approve offering the option of a morning and afternoon section of 4K at Jefferson and McDill Elementary. So moved.
Motion by Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Evil. So we have a motion and a second on the floor, and I now open it up for discussion among board members.
This has to be done today, right? Because of next week.
I would recommend it gets done today, yes.
I think one of the questions that I heard from, either from one of the letters we got or from some public speakers today, is they're afraid that this is gonna be a total takeover of 4K population, that we're moving towards that. And I know Craig said that that'll never happen because you don't have the space. But there won't, in 10, 12 years, there won't be the same people sitting here that are sitting here now. So there's no real way to make that promise. But that's what people are hoping. Because as Rob said, we're asking to almost compete with those people that are working with us.
Gee, to that point, right now, I can say that I would not want to move to an all 4K program that would be housed only in schools. It goes back to what Meg said about providing options for families. And I think if we provide community sites and options that provide wraparound care and sites where families feel comfortable with because they've been there for many years, it's just better opportunities for kids. You're right, we can't promise actually what's going to happen tomorrow, but our intent right now is not to bring all of those in. I would like to continue a community collaborative model.
The wraparound option is a huge
Absolutely.
concern.
Point of clarification, I don't think I referenced never. Never is a long time. That certainly isn't our intent, as Corey just said.
Do any other board members have questions, thoughts, comments with respect to the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay? Motion carries. Rob, you want to go ahead?
Next up on the agenda is an update from Caleb to talk about the student mental health.
Well, good evening. Today I'm actually very excited to be here. It's been a while since you've all received a mental health update. I went back in my files and it's actually been a couple of years. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk about a really important topic that we've all known that's been going on in our schools, more importantly in our community as well. The beginning of our presentation is just a little update on data. This is currently off of our public website. Our current enrollment right now is 6,985. Students with disabilities, near and dear to my heart. We're about 14% of our populations are students with disabilities. Our students that are in the area of economically disadvantaged is about 42.7%, and that's district-wide. That varies between the buildings that you attend. Our English learners is 5%, and our homeless count, and this kind of fluctuates, but is right around that 2% mark. The next series of data is just a description over the last 3 years that kind of show the top 5 areas that we continue to document within our district, being physical aggression, defiance and noncompliance, disruption, and technology violations, especially in the era of COVID and our virtual learning that's been there. I want to draw your attention to the colors. The colors that you see, the maroon is 2019-20, the blue is 2021, and the green is current year. The green is current year pulled in January. So I want to be mindful of, as you look through the data here, that's half a year's worth of data versus the other 2 are full year's worth of data. Also be mindful that last year we had, that was our hybrid year as well. In 2019, something to note too, that was when we were also in shutdown in March. So you can kind of see a little comparison, but as we go through the upcoming slides, a highlighted notion here or note is that in January, you'll see some of these top areas already halfway or almost all comparable to the 2 previous years. Withdrawal disengagement is an area that we were extremely concerned about, especially when we start talking mental health. It's one of the largest areas of concerns that come through my office truly with our student service staff. Low work completion is something also that we track, and you can see that the incidents that come in are that way. Disruptive and uncooperative behaviors is something that we really see within our school environment. It's our student services kind of bread and butter. That's what we work with, as well as we've been collecting harassment data lately as well. Defiance and noncompliance, this is one of the areas that we continue to work through. This is one that I want to note too, that if you look at the green bar in January, it's almost as tall as the entire 2019, 2020 data that we saw, and that's only halfway through the year. The total majors, we have just about over 1,000 total majors already in January for this school year. That's district-wide, I want to remind you, so that's all 14 sites that we work with. And again, that's comparable to some of the other ones.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by total major?
So every incident that may happen at school, we document it through our systems that we track. That helps us with planning and resources that are available. So within our internal systems, an incident or a major, which would be a high level of behavior that would incident that. So we work through what that indicates. We work with students and staff, what a difference between all of those are, but those are major events that require us documentation for one, and more than likely additional staff involvement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Additional resources that we continue to look through. Obviously, we work with our student office visits. We track that as best we can. Sometimes it gets a little busy in our student services offices. We do work with our county and our hospitals to monitor our suicidal ideation and attempts. Again, that doesn't always come in as readily available, but those have been coming more available to us as we've been partnering with them. We have been really watching and monitoring our at-risk populations and our credit deficiency concerns. That directly correlates to our disengagement and some of these other behavioral things that you've seen. We continue to look at opportunity gaps for students of color, students with disabilities, and students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So we continuously monitor academic engagement and achievement based off of the different minority groups. I want to talk about a little bit what we have in place currently. Just for elementary staffing, this is student services specific. This is our elementary staff. So a 0.5 is a half-time person. So SWs are social workers, school psychologists, and counselors. The BSS that you see is the behavior support specialist that was mentioned earlier in presentations in this, but we have 2 schools that have behavior support specialists or behavior support teachers. Kind of depends on who you talk to and the name of them. We are working to make some equity within our 9 elementary schools to make sure that our student service staff are the same. So no matter what school you go to, Bannock and Jefferson are the two that have that part-time social worker counselor. Our secondary staff, PJ's currently has 2 counselors and a 0.8 psych. They share their psych with pods to help with student services. Ben Franklin has a counselor and a social worker and a 1.0 psych. SPASH has 5 counselors, like a 0.5 or a 1.0 504 coordinator, and they have 1.5 psychs there. CFC has a 1.0 social worker.
Sorry.
It's okay. We got this. In pods, we do also support through the SPASH's counseling department as well as our junior high student service and counselors as needed. So they are supported. They just don't have dedicated time out there. Community partners, we do have continued MOU agreements with community counselors or community counseling clinics within our schools. They're fee-free spaces that limit the educational disruption. We continue to seek out and partner with up-and-coming counseling agencies. I literally just got an email this week that we're going to be able to add another one for the 22-23 school year. So we're always eager, as people come into our community, we partner with them. We recently opened them up to all schools to create additional opportunities and resources for students so that it's not limited to a specific school that they go to. So our goal is to find the best fit for our students, not dependent upon what school you go to. We also have representation in the district at all the community partners within and the coalitions. The acronyms that you saw on the previous slide, I would love to tell you what they are, but we have mental health coalitions, AODA coalitions, we have students with disabilities and family with disability coalitions. So, but we have student service representation, we have staff representation on the different community coalitions. We have a mental health awareness coalition, as well as a triage coalition that I myself sit on to help with partnering with all the community resources. I want to talk a little bit about what we currently have programming in schools, and these are individual programs that are available to all students within the school environment. We have individual counseling done by our community partners. We also have individual counseling with our student services if the student needs that opportunity. We have outpatient individual counseling, again, through our community partners. Our classroom guidance that we talk through, the 5 different things there are programs that we offer to help students regulate or help students work through the different challenges that we have available. Our student service staff and school psychologists provide support groups as targeted. We've recently partnered with a program called Nurture Heart Approach. It's a national approach for kind of mindset of how we approach students. It works on greatness and strengths. We have currently 7 of our elementary schools piloting these programs and implementing it as a school-wide baseline. PBIS, we currently have in all of our schools. In a different capacity, they all make it unique to their building culture. And we also work continuously on crisis management. And that really is about how we respond appropriately to students. And we have that ongoing support. We've been doing a lot of training to help our student services stay up to date in the research. We recently this year have been working with Dr. Pam Beyer with the student service staff. She's been coming in she is a clinical psychologist within Aspirus and Ascensions. Right now they're the same, I think. But she comes in and does specifically to our student service staff on topics, as well as she collaborates and helps with any troubleshooting with specific cases. We've expanded our crisis prevention intervention. We have a trainer in every one of our buildings to help ongoing support to students, as well as training for new staff. We have district representation that are trained in youth mental health first aid that helps with professional development in those areas. We recently were donated 14 backpacks, and I can say proudly they were donated actually from my parents as a gift to the district. They are regulation kits, so then I had a mental health team pack them with fidgets and blankets and books and anything that students need in a time of a need and type of crisis. And so instead of trying to search for it in the building, they can grab this backpack, they can go to that spot and provide it to that student where they're at and work with them there. We also started introducing a product called Crisis Cards for students. They are little business cards that they work individually that give non-communication strategies so that if a kid is in crisis, instead of communicating where fight, flight, or freeze is real, they can offer this crisis card. The staff are trained to read it and give that student that opportunity to do it. We're also partnering with our liaison officers and community police to also see that as well for some of those students on disability or just get frozen, that we want to provide them an opportunity to have a voice. And so our goal is to have all students have this opportunity to carry around with them. We have enough for every student in our district. We just started this implementation because we've been doing staff training on how to use this in January. And so that will start to kind of implement out. We're also doing ongoing training in culturally responsive practices. Sam and Gigi have been tremendous with us. We continue to partner with UWSP and Lindsay Bernhagen on culturally responsive practices, specifically just in general, how to be culturally responsive to students in crisis. We continue to support our LGBTQ plus community. Sam and Gigi have been tremendous on this one. We've also introduced gender support plans to help support students as they transition and as they are becoming themselves, and we honor each individual student and provide them accommodations and supports. Our QPR training is specific to suicide risk prevention. We have risk assessment training as well as creating safety plans for students in need. Our student services teams are very well trained in this, and they document and work with families and community partners as we go. What I'm really excited about tonight is to introduce a partnership that we have with Portage County and CAP Services. We now have school-based mental health navigation through CAP Services specifically for our schools. Previously were two community navigators through CAP Services. Through this assistance with Portage County, we were able to secure specifically one full-time navigator that is housed within our school environment that's going to be working within every one of our buildings. They're currently housed at CFC, but they're going to have a schedule throughout. They're providing community mental health navigation, but they're dedicated just for our school community students, families, and staff. In addition to that, we were also able to secure an 8-hour or a part-time mental health navigator specifically for our Hmong population. So if you want to go to the next slide, if it works. Here are our two individuals. Alex is a full-time advocate. She's 37 and a half hours. She's year-round, which also helps us through the summer months. I'm really excited for that. This is a 15-month contract, hoping to expand it further. She will be and has currently been working with us for about a month and is getting referrals left and right. So they are working to help navigate the struggles of the mental health services within our community. Mai is also receiving referrals, but again, specifically for our Hmong population to help them navigate the challenges that are presented there. These are extremely important for our expansion of services, and we're really excited to have them join us. Student services are the go-to people for referrals. They fill out the referral and it gets sent to them. If they get overwhelmed, CAP Services continue to help support those two individuals as the referrals come in. The last slide that was in your document is kind of my ongoing list of things that we're doing within there, and also some future planning of what I'm hoping to provide the district as well. It's the last slide within your presentation. A lot to go through really quickly, and I apologize. So I will take and would appreciate any questions if you have them. Yes.
So Caleb,
Yeah.
I think your presentation, anyone who's watching or listening can hear of what, just a phenomenal job is done to support our students. It's amazing.
Thank you.
So normally what I do if I have a major question of concern or kudos, what's working well, what are you doing, what's working well is here. So I guess I would say or ask, what would you feel from 2 years ago till now? What is your greatest need or need/concern? right now?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I know.
It's hard, that's it's a hard question to pinpoint.
I know.
Truly, I think it's just access. And I know that's access to the resources. Staffing is always a great opportunity. Getting more staff to provide students these resources is always a need, immediate need. As you saw in our staffing, we're well staffed, but we love more. More staff means more access to students and opportunities to provide those supports. As our needs and our behaviors and our mental health concerns rise, that need for support for those students rise as well. And kudos to my teams that are in the schools every day. I really, truly cannot speak enough about them. They're working through this every single day. And so providing them more opportunities to collaborate and have additional people to work with gives students that opportunity as well.
Well, I don't want to put the administration.
No, we monitor this really closely, and we're really trying to find ways to provide this and to give this to schools. And that's why partnering with the Portage County and CAP Services was such a tremendous opportunity for us this year, and really providing it through this year, the summer, and through next year is going to be tremendous. And summer school is one of those areas that I'm really excited for, because it's one area that, you know, students kind of fall off. They're here all summer to help us.
Well, thank you very much. Kudos to you and all of the support for our students.
Thank you.
It's amazing, especially during these times.
Thank you. Appreciate
Really
that.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anne? Anne, do you have a question?
I do. So I'm looking at here on one of the slides. It's the slide that says school-based mental health navigation. What can mental health navigation advocates offer, and what they cannot offer.
Yep.
It's great that we're partnering up with CAP Services mental health providers in navigation, I should say. They're really great people. Now worked with that department in the past at CAP Services. My concern here is that we are lacking culture-specific mental health care directly to our students. It's great that they're going to have resources. I've done research. There is no mental health provider specifically for home folks. I have looked in the Fox Valley area. The closest one is in Minneapolis. How does the school intend to support our students who won't have access to them directly? Will they be able to take time off away from classes to maybe be this counselor who is not going to be local, so that they can have that counseling session? Is it going to be paid by the district, or is it going to be up to the parents of the child who needs this support? It's really great that you all are thinking with culture-specific healthcare. You know, I think I've been talking about this since I came on the board nearly 3 years ago. I feel like you all have come a long way. We all have come a long way. But I'm really just concerned that we're missing the point here, where we're not providing them the actual resources that we need. We're saying that we're giving resources, but I know that we're lacking it. We're lacking, and it's not that we don't know where they are. We just don't have any locally. So what are we doing more to get them, what are we doing to attract them? If we can't attract them to come to Stevens Point, what are we doing so that we can contract with actual counselors where our students can talk to them about what's going on? Even if we can't have that, what are we doing to provide support groups within our schools so that our students can talk to each other and talk to students who are alike, and they can process these things in a safe and welcoming environment? I think we don't necessarily always have to provide them with professional support, but I think support amongst their peers and providing them just a safe space in their school so that they don't have to go to hide these feelings or anything like that. I think our students are so smart and they know what they want. They're just not being provided that safe space to talk about this openly.
I can speak to how we're going to provide them access, and this is not just specific. Mental health access and counselors is a challenge for all students, specifically this one. If there's time that they need to travel to Minneapolis, they're absolutely able to take that time off without penalty. We've also increased and really expanded our virtual options. That's where much of our counseling actually has occurred, and they've provided a space and an opportunity to meet with these individuals, these professionals, on a virtual platform in a confidential way that's provided in the school setting so they don't miss out. And that's a continuous conversation on providing these safe space, these support groups that we're having with Sam and Gigi right now to be able to provide that. Because you're absolutely right. It doesn't always have to be the professionals. It just needs to be safe places. So we are providing that continuous conversation. But when it comes to that mental health professional, we do what we can to offer to all students, not just those that are in the Hmong population or other diversities. Some of them can't get anywhere. So if they're challenged to drive somewhere, we do have resources. We work with our community partners to get them to those locations. If they have to drive out of the community, we either find a way to get them out of the community, to get them there, or we find ways for the technology to bring them forward. Telehealth has been tremendous for us this year, and we really have seen increased use of that. So, and you make some really great points, and we continue to strive to reach those different areas and provide safe places for students and families to talk about the needs that they have. I appreciate those comments, Ann.
I also had something, in looking at the community resources such as housing, unemployment, and health insurance, etc. How transparent is this information going to be to families and students prior to them speaking to a mental health navigator from CAP Services? Is this going to be, hey, we do have housing programs available directly through CAP, or we do have partners that have housing available, or is it just going to be like, well, we can get you in contact with this management company? From what I understand here in the Stevens Point district, there's one large management company, and I know that there's been issues with folks who don't meet the specific guidelines such as income or credit score that is needed to rent a house. So again, just looking for the transparency of what the services that they're putting on here entail.
The services that you see here are directly from CAP Services, so I don't want to speak on their behalf about what they're going to promise on this one. This is the intent with the navigation services is taking their employees and providing them a school-based space. So the advocates that are hired through CAP Services, they work with the community resources. I don't know to the extent and in which that conversation goes, and I don't want to speak on their behalf on that one, but I can definitely find out and bring that back for clarity. But the information provided in this presentation was directly from them of how they communicate this out. This has been communicated out in newsletters and will be put out on our website as well. So those are great questions, and I'm happy to bring that back if you'd like.
And then one more question for the mental health. What are we doing for our Black and other brown students and our QT students? Do we know if any of one of these mental health navigators from CAP Services is familiar with the QT population?
Yeah,
Population?
I know that they continue to work with them. How familiar they are, again, I don't want to speak for those advocates, but I do know that we do support that group really closely. I do know that my student service staff, as they're navigating those, recommend this to the navigators, both the two individuals here, but the other two individuals that we continue to partner with as well through CAP Services. So they're well versed in that too. But again, I'm without putting words in their mouths, I don't want to speak directly towards or for those advocates, Ann.
Okay.
Do you have any further questions, Ann?
No.
Okay. Any other board members have questions for Caleb? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caleb.
Thanks, Caleb. Okay, so we will move into, gotta find where I'm on my, I believe we are looking at the future meeting dates, times, and our next regular board meeting will be on March 14, 2022. We will be having a discussion this month. You know, we met today in person, and we'll be having a conversation about whether we'll be looking to hopefully bring committees back in March so that we can begin to move back into the kind of new normal, frankly, endemic part of where we're at. So
If we do that in March, it's likely going to have to be a different day than Monday because the Portage County Business Council annual dinner is that night.
okay.
So
So
just FYI.
We'll let you know. We'll let you know about that.
Probably just Tuesday.
Right.
Yep.
All right. I am looking for a motion to go into closed session under Wisconsin Statute 1985, paren 1, paren C, which is considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to consider employment recommendation and contract, and 1985, paren 1, paren C, paren E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to discuss bargaining strategies and parameters for negotiations.
Move to go into closed.
Motion by Ebel, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Portson. Any discussion or questions on that motion? Hearing none, I'll have Carlin call the roll.
Mr. Wade,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Reno,
Yes.
Ms. Va,
Yes.
Mr. Mansky,
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
and motion passes.
Okay, give us about 10 minutes to set up the room.